Welcome to the CDG BizCast. I'm your host, Christian Gonzalez, co-owner of Creativity Design Group, a digital marketing firm in Houston, Texas. So today's topic is going to be focused all about the new year. The families have flown back home, the kids are back in school, and the Christmas decorations have all come down. We are in a new year. Today we will be discussing how business owners should transition into the new year. We will discuss resolutions, improvement, goal setting, and other topics to help give business owners of all sizes a positive outlook for 2024. Joining me is my colleague and good friend, Anthony Lindsay of Astor Business Centers in Houston, Texas. Welcome to the show, Anthony. It's great to have you back on. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, and thank you for having me.
Please introduce yourself or explain a little bit more about what you do.
All right, so I'm Anthony Lindsay, as Christian said. I am a business owner and also a business consultant. So I work specifically with startups and side hustlers. So people who are starting a new business anywhere from 6 months before they start all the way up until 24 months. And I also work with side hustlers. So people that are working full time, but are also trying to generate additional revenue with an additional revenue or income stream.
These are all very important things to remember when you're starting a business. And a lot of people are making that New Year's resolution to start a business. It's the first thing they're thinking about as soon as they get into January. And I'm going to ask you a series of questions to help business owners get a better outlook for the new year. So with that being said, Anthony, my first question for you is, well, first let me make this statement. Most people do not stick to their New Year's resolutions. If business owners have to make one resolution to stick to it for the new year, what do you think it should be?
I think in making a New Year's resolution, the first thing to look at is what your goals are. So if you have your goals in place, from there, you just want to make sure that they are SMART. So the specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So have a goal. So that would be the core, but make sure that your resolution or resolutions are SMART. So you're not just putting things out there that you would like to do, but it is realistically not something you can do. So just setting good goals that are SMART.
Yes, very well said. I've always felt that too many business owners make goals that are unrealistic, and then they learn the hard way after spending thousands of dollars, after using several resources, that their goals just weren't attainable because they didn't have a realistic focus on them. For example, maybe you own a pizza shop and your goal is to sell 1,000 pizzas per month. Now, that probably doesn't sound very attainable, especially since you have to keep replenishing all of your raw materials, all of the resources it takes to make a pizza. So that probably isn't the most realistic of goals. But would you agree or disagree with that example?
I think that's a great example. And that's why that process of just having an overall goal. So a pizza shop might have the goal of, in the next fiscal year, having a turnover of X. And then, what they're going to need to do is work backwards. But within those individual steps, they have to make sure that they are SMART. So that will be the measure of if that 1,000 pizzas is actually a good goal to have. So you can say you're going to do the 1,000. You then have to look at what the raw materials cost, what the capacity is, what your hours are, etc. So I think you've made a really good point.
It's important to evaluate all of these things, especially the cost of raw materials and labor, because when you're in a business that involves having to acquire a lot of materials, you want to make sure that your products are priced appropriately so that your business overall is making a profit. The profit margin is set properly. A lot of business owners, when they start a business, what they fail to do is understand the business side of things. So you could be the best at making pizzas. Your pizzas may get raved about by your family and friends, but if you want to take that skill, start a business out of it, the first thing you need to know is, what does it take to start a business? What does it take to run a business? And understanding all the technicalities in between. You have to understand what profit margin is. You have to understand how pricing works and profitability, because it costs money to make money. And what you don't want to happen is to see that you were not pricing your products appropriately, and in the end you saw that you made no profit. All the money that you spent on making one pizza just simply came back to you without any profit, without any extra for yourself or to contribute back into the business. A lot of business owners just simply need to understand what it truly means to run a business, You can have your skill, but you also need to know what it simply takes to run a business. And what are the general basics that startup business owners need to know before they even decide they want to start a business? What are some things that they really need to educate themselves on so that they will not have problems later as they go through their first year of business?
Well, what they're going to need to know is why they're starting the business. So it's important to know your why. Quite often I find people are starting businesses because they don't like their boss, or because they've lost their job, or because, as you said, and you used a good example, people think because they're good at what they do as a job, that they could just do that as a business. And that's not always a recipe for success. I like to keep things simple. And I think if business or aspiring business owners were to keep it simple, follow the basic steps. So step number one is get a business plan. So I've come to the point as a consultant where I'm not going to say it doesn't matter how much someone's going to pay me, but at the price point that I work at, which is an entry level price point, you either have to commit to doing the business planning process with me, or you have to have a robust business plan that you can share with me that we can make sure all the fundamentals are in place. So the business plan is going to make sure that all of the items that you spoke about, Christian, are in place, that there's a clear understanding of what is the marketing strategy, what is the actual service or business that you're in. Because sometimes, people may think that they're in a specific business. So for example, it's a common thing that you see on social media, like Uber does not own a car. Uber is a logistics company. It's not a car company or taxi company per se. It's a technology logistics company. So by doing a business plan, what you're going to do is you're going to go through your whys, you're going to go through your hows, you're going to go through your process, because this is another key thing that a lot of startups don't take into account. What is my process? What does the customer journey look like? So by having a robust business plan, you're going to need to answer all of those questions. And that's really the starting point. If you haven't put together a business plan, then I'd say you have no business starting a business.
Yes, very well said. A lot of startup business owners don't make a business plan simply because they don't know what a business plan is. They don't know the first step of starting a business. And the purpose of this episode is to go over those little things to help future startup owners who are looking to start a business in 2024 understand a few things related to the foundations. There is a foundation that you have to follow to start a business, and a business plan is certainly the first thing. In fact, you could say the business plan is the foundation of your business in written form. Now, in terms of businesses that are already established, what would you say is the most common mistake business owners make when it comes to reviewing data from the previous year?
Well, I'd probably take it one step before that, because you've said one of the key things about the data. I would say that in my experience, a lot of the businesses that I work with don't have the correct KPIs in place. So they've never really drilled down and said, well, what are the key touch points? How do I then measure them? And how do I put some targets in place? So I would say what a lot of people do is they would review just raw numbers. So they would say, oh, well, I turned over X amount, right? And potentially when they're doing their taxes, their accountant would drill down a little bit more into profit, etc. But again, going back to the pizza scenario, quite often they're not taking into account cost of materials. They're not taking into account marketing. They're not taking into account, and this is probably one of the most common things, they're not taking into account their time, So they are essentially, they have a job that they own as opposed to having a business. So it might look good at the end of the year. You might see that you turned over 100,000 and your accountants will say you made a profit. But if you back out what potentially you could have been making working at a job, you might find that actually it would make more sense for you to go work at McDonald's, because at least you'd have benefits and you get paid every week or every month and you get healthcare benefits, etc. So just to, I guess, best way of answering that question is when people are reviewing the previous year, they don't have the right metrics to look at. So they're often operating in a false economy.
Yes, that's true. It's always important to look back on your numbers and see where profits really were. And this can help you spot problematic areas as well. Maybe you might realize that you weren't making a profit selling this particular product, or all of your profits came from a completely different category of products and services that you sell. It's important to see what's bringing in the money, right? What truly is the most profitable area of business your company specializes in. This leads me into my next question, and it kind of sounds the same, but at the same time, it's different. But what would you say is the most important thing business owners should review when they review the previous year? In addition to profits, what other areas of business should business owners review when looking back on last year's performance?
They should be looking at their process. So your business should be a constant review and iteration of process. So you look at your process, you perfect your process, then you see maybe where the friction is, you remove the friction, you tweak, then you run it for a while, you look at the numbers, you see what you can iterate, what you can improve. It's just constantly reviewing the process and getting it to a point that it's optimized to a point where then you can look at maybe other opportunities, or then you might look at, as you said, Christian, you might then look at it and say, well, you know what? I'm getting most of my profit from this particular product. And then I have 3 other products that are breaking even, but they're sucking up a lot of time. It would make more sense to remove those products, focus more on the product that is generating the most profit for you. Well, first of all, to have a written process, not just something that's in your head or just happens because it happens, but have a written process, look at the key stages of that process, make sure that each key stage is optimized, and then review what you can do to move that forward for the new year.
Right. It's all about ensuring that business owners have a streamlined process. Streamlined processes for both their internal operations as well as for the customer journey. And one area that I advise every business out there, whether you're a large conglomerate or just a small mom and pop shop, this is always going to be very important. Have A+ customer service. I've talked about this in so many different episodes. It's something that I cannot stop stressing the importance of. And when you talk about optimizing your processes, that especially applies for the customer service process. It's always important to make sure that business owners are able to deliver a stellar experience and that the customer leaves ready to leave you a 5-star review with a smile on their face, because too many businesses, especially in the larger sectors, are not good at this. They hire people who have no compassion and they show no interest in helping the customer, which results in the overall company getting a bad image, and then it costs them customers. It costs them their customer base. They'll leave and they'll go find an alternative. They'll go to a competitor. Customer service can definitely make or break the customer experience. And I honestly think that providing great customer service is even more important than your product or service offerings.
Yeah, because I think if we are realistic about it, we have to then consider that your process has to include a feedback mechanism for service. So as part of your process, you're building in a way that your clients or your customers can provide that feedback. Then you can see what if it's a criticism or if it's a complaint, you can see what the source of the complaint is. But if you don't have the right systems in place, so I talk to everyone. It's like I'm an evangelist for a CRM. It's shocking to me, people who have what they believe is a business and it might be making money, but don't have some type of customer relationship management system in place. Because if you have that in place, what it's going to enable you to do is have processes. It's going to enable you to track processes. It's going to be able to track your data and crunch numbers and run different scenarios. But without a customer relationship management system, and it doesn't have to be Salesforce or Infusionsoft, there's lots of stuff out there. The key is using it and having a data-driven business. Too many startups and side hustles have an emotional business. So it's like, oh, I'm really good at this thing and I enjoy doing this thing. Therefore, it should be a business. And because money is coming in, their belief is that they're making money. But if they were to have the right mechanisms to capture data, to look at the raw numbers, and to let that data inform processes and inform decisions, they were to do that, what they would find is that they'd make better decisions. It may not be the hard decision they want to make, but they might say, you know what, actually, I need to just shut my doors, or I need to stop this particular product, or I need to outsource, or I need to get a virtual assistant, but the data will drive the decision as opposed to emotion driving the decision.
Yes, that's very important to remember. It shouldn't always be all about emotion. Like I said, going back to what I just said at the beginning of the show, too many people start a business not really knowing what business really is. And knowing your numbers, knowing your data is a big part of running and operating a business. So if you don't know how to handle your numbers, then I would say find someone who can do it for you. You don't have to start a business alone. If you have the resources to bring in some extra help, you could bring in somebody who's good at handling finances, for example. And I read this in Tillman Fertitta's Shut Up and Listen book, a book that I highly recommend to all business owners out there. He says in the book that if you are not good with handling numbers, hire somebody who can. Not everybody is good at performing certain tasks. And if your resources allow you to hire people, hire somebody who can fill in all those gaps that you can't fill in yourself. And this leads me into my next question for you. And that is, which areas of business should owners be making the most investment into spending wise? So I just gave an example of investing into employees who can help you fill the gaps of areas in your business that you're not particularly knowledgeable in.
I would say if I had to just isolate one thing, I would say force multipliers. So technology, anything that's going to multiply either your time, your efficiency, your reach, that's probably going to be a investment worth considering. But it will always come back to knowing your numbers, because you need to be able to quantify if the investment is going to give you a return. And the only way you can know that is know what you're currently making and know what optimizing that particular process or that particular thing, how that's going to benefit you. So we could talk all day about different things, but the key will be having a business plan that you have mapped out where you want to be, creating some KPIs or key performance indicators, having a system to then be able to capture the data, and then just reviewing it. Because going back to what you're saying about hiring a person, if you don't know what your processes are, and if you don't have things written out, and if you don't have a system, how are you going to even explain to them what you want them to do? Where are they going to find the numbers to look at? The business plan, I think what I found is some people feel the purpose of a business plan is to go to a bank and get money, as opposed to the business plan being a blueprint and a game plan for how you are going to run your business, how much it's going to cost you, what products you're going to sell, who you're going to market to. A business plan is a blueprint. It's not necessarily just a letter to go and beg to a bank with. And I think that's one of the misconceptions. And I think the other thing, if I'm honest, when you drill down a little bit further when talking to people about business plans, is the act of writing the business plan makes it real. And sometimes people kind of don't want it actually to be real, because then they'll see how bad an idea their business is to begin with. Whereas when it's in their head, they can just freestyle. But when it's on paper and somebody else is looking at that, you're accountable to what you've put on that piece of paper.
That's very true. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was reading about an example that pretty much describes what you're saying here. A real world example that happened in the corporate world some 20 years ago, where the idea sounded good on paper, but once they executed it, it turned out to be a disaster. It turned out to be a service that the entire consumer base rejected up front. I'm talking about the DivX DVD platform that was introduced by Circuit City back in 1998. Yeah, we're talking a long time ago, and many of us still remember Circuit City, and there are people out there who miss shopping there. They found it to be a better alternative to Best Buy, but this one particular product offering was called DivX DVD. They were trying to break into the DVD market as people were trying to transition away from VHS tapes. The year was 1998, and this concept was a DVD player that connected to a special server with a phone line. So similar to dial-up internet. Remember, this was 1998 and dial-up was a big thing. How it worked was you would buy the DVD movies that you wanted, and you would pay a cheap price, like $5, but you would have to pay every time you wanted to watch this disc. Anytime you wanted to watch it, it would charge per viewing. So it would look it up in the server and then authorize you to watch it. If you didn't pay for the second viewing, it wouldn't recognize it. Just based on what I'm telling you, you can already see why this product was a flop, because people did not want to have to keep paying every time they wanted to watch a DVD that they already had a physical disc for. It doesn't make sense. And as a result, the consumers did not accept this product, did not accept this technology. They just wanted a regular DVD player where they can put a movie in and watch it whenever they wanted. And as a result, the service shut down after only a year in operation. And the executives at Circuit City realized that it was a terrible idea. They thought it was a good idea at the time because many studios supported it, being that it would help prevent piracy. It would prevent movie piracy, the illegal copying of DVDs. But in the end, it just made the customers angry, and they just took a huge hit on their financial bottom line.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think one of the upsides to that is that very quickly they recognized, because a year, 18 months is not a long time for such a large endeavor. So they looked at the data, they saw that it wasn't the appetite that they anticipated, and they pivoted, and that's what you have to do sometimes. Because the other danger is some people don't want to accept that there's no appetite for the product. But it's a very fine line, because sometimes you have to break the back of the product. Other times, no matter what you do, it's just never going to come around. And sometimes you're just way too ahead of your time. And the technology to support the thing, because if you think about it, with something like that, we have streaming services now. People are doing subscription. So there's so many different factors in place, which is why you need to have data and let the data drive your decisions, and have a business plan where you've said, this is what I need to do. And if the data is not lining up with that, then you can, do some iteration. Or it may just mean you, as what you said with Circuit City, may mean that you just move to the next thing.
That's true. It's important to evaluate your data. If you're in charge of reviewing the performance levels of certain products or services, then that's when you need to make the decision over whether or not you're going to continue to sell a product if it's not performing at its peak level. And as for business plans, you could even say business plans are an ongoing investment for business owners, because business plans are not written in stone. The data information that is in a business plan when you initially start the business will most likely change as time goes by, and you'll realize that you're going to need to continue refining that roadmap to keep it relevant to the present day situations and standards. Would you agree or disagree with me on that?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So yeah, it's a living document, but what you should set is agreed times where you're going to review, because you can't change your business plan every day. But then every 5 years is probably, depending on the size of your business, every 5 years is probably too much time. But it's just about being honest with yourself, being honest with the data, and having some clear objectives in place. And, as you said, having the right team, because sometimes you might need someone else to look at the data in order for you to be able to make the right decision.
And with that being said, this leads directly into my next question for you. And that is, after reviewing the data and realizing that certain areas of business may need some changes done, what would you say are some general housekeeping tips that business owners should make as we transition into a new year? What are some common ones? Little changes and things like that.
I would say one thing, review your direct debits or your auto payments, or however you're making payments to people. Review them. Make sure that whatever you're paying for is still fit for purpose. One of the ways that in the new economy and in the new structure of things with subscriptions, one of the ways that they get you is they get you on subscriptions that are, especially if you have decent cash flow, they're not bank breakers. They're like $7.99 here, $12.99 there. Review them. Because sometimes what you might find is you might be paying for 4 different products. So for example, I have a CRM that I build out for people. This CRM replaces MailChimp. It replaces a lot of different things. So instead of a client paying for all of these different things, which are small amounts in and of themselves, they can pay a lower overall amount for something that's fully integrated. So I would recommend that everybody just look at the money that's going out of your business, review, even if it's like, services, if it's Reliant or whoever you're dealing with, see if there are competitors that want that business. So sometimes, especially if you're reaching the end of a contract, instead of just renewing, shop around, or even go back to that original person and, say, I'm thinking of leaving. What can you do for me to keep my business? The other thing that I would say is look at the off ramps. Look at how you can monetize your off ramps. And what I mean by that is you may have pizza shop. You may have people that come in all the time and ask for a particular thing that you don't do, wouldn't be viable for you to do, but you may be able to refer those people to someone else and get a commission for that referral. So that's an off ramp where, right now you're just sending people elsewhere, right? But you could find someone who needs that business and come up with some type of affiliate deal or commission deal where you say, all right, every time someone comes in and asks for this thing, I'll give them your information. And if they buy your product, then you can give me a commission. I'll give you a really good example, Christian. So you've been to our office. When we first met you, when we were over there on Beach Nut, the phone number for our office was apparently a florist. So come Mother's Day, Christmas, Valentine's Day, to this day, our phone rings off the hook. People trying to reach this particular florist. Now, it so happens that it's a Hispanic-owned florist. I'd say 80% of the people that call are Spanish speaking. They speak English as well, but they feel more comfortable speaking in Spanish. I'm not fluent in Spanish. And so what I did is in my BNI group, I had a florist. I said, well, look, we get all these calls, and these are people that genuinely are looking to purchase flowers. What can we work out that I can get the information, basic information from these people and refer them over to you? Now, as you know, my business is business consultancy and mailboxes and things of that nature. So I'm not a florist, but I saw an opportunity to help someone who's just called my number and help someone in my BNI group. So it's about thinking outside of the box, because if we can do things to help our fellow business owners, sometimes you'll get something in return, sometimes you won't. But the benefit is that you're helping someone else, and it helps the economy, because small businesses are the backbone of the U.S.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. Small businesses are the backbone of the U.S. What makes small business owners so much different from everyone else is the fact that we're resilient. We don't let bad numbers or a poor economy scare us into getting out of business. We instead create strategies to help fight these things so that we can stay afloat. When it comes to commissions, yes, I wholeheartedly love the idea of paying commissions as a way to say thank you. We do this here at CDG. Anytime one of our clients or anybody in general sends us a successful referral, they get a 15% commission of that referral back if the sale was successfully closed. And if they are a B2B customer, which of course most of them are, they even have the opportunity to convert their commissions as payment towards other services they might need in the future. So that's one way they can actually get some free services. It's a great way to continue to say thank you to your customer and also receive some more additional profit for yourself. And of course, more importantly, it's a great way to support the small business community. Now, what would you say as we start off a brand new year, which areas of business do you think owners should put a stronger focus on? Now, I know it's a pretty broad question, and that the answer to that question really depends on different areas that businesses need to improve upon. But what would you say in general business owners should put a stronger focus on as we start a new year?
I'm in the networking zone right now. I just find that networking, and I mean organic networking, I mean strategic networking, but not networking for the purpose of finding customers. And I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong. So I go to networking events, I have networking groups, I'm on LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the biggest put-offs is someone who, within the very first two pieces of communication with me, is trying to sell me something. I'm like, I don't know you, and it just makes you feel as if this whole thing is transactional and not relational. So I think if business owners were to look to network more with a view of adding value to other people. So, Christian, you go to a networking event and you meet someone, and instead of you doing a pitch on what you do, finding out from that person what they do, what they need, and who within your network could probably be their customer. And what I found is by doing that, whatever business you're going to get anyway, right? But what you'll find is because most people are wired for reciprocation, like if you meet someone on Wednesday and they are a beverage company and you're like, oh, okay, you're a beverage company. I know a guy that owns a pizza shop. I'd like to introduce you to Gino. You know, he has a pizza shop. I can't promise anything, but it might be a good link for you. So you call him on Thursday and say, you know, I spoke to Gino. Gino's happy to have a conversation with you. Again, I can't promise anything, but I think this would be a good link. That person all of a sudden is like, well, wow, I don't even know Christian. And Christian has made this introduction. Regardless of what happens with that introduction, that person now is like, oh, okay, Christian's a good guy. And then all of a sudden, they might know someone who needs a website. They pick up the phone and call you. And they're like, oh, you know, I know someone that needs a website. I gave them your number. Now, are you doing it specifically for that purpose? No, you know, but what you will find is it's just the way that life works. You know, people want to repay people. They did a study about car dealerships and the top salesmen. There was something about the top salesmen tend to offer the customer a drink. Like it could be something really small, but most decent people want to reciprocate. So I just think if people focus on networking, focus on getting to know people to see what value they can add to that person, I think with everything else in place, it's not a silver bullet. But if you have good services, if you have a CRM, if you have a good process, great customer service, you have some type of reward or commission scheme for your clients to thank them for introducing people to you, and then you go out and start to expand your network, I think you know, a lot of good things can happen for you.
Yes, agreed. I like to go to networking events myself whenever there are some good ones in the area. And when I go in, I never go in with the main intention of just trying to turn everybody I meet into clients, because I know there's just so much more to that. And you gave a great example. I just like to get to know what they do and see if there's in any way we can help each other out, or if they know somebody who might need each other's services. That's what I like. Or maybe not even for those reasons at all. Maybe I might run into somebody who doesn't need our services at all, but I like the person so much that I'll probably invite them to be on the podcast to talk about their company or something like that. It's not all about just making money, and we don't like being cold sold to. We did a whole podcast episode about this back in 2022. It's called Salespeople Stop Being Rude to Your Customers, and we talk about how the average customer does not like it when people get in their face and try to push a product onto them that they probably have no interest in buying, as they view that as rude and pushy. Now, in networking, it's pretty much the same thing. If you're just going to go to networking events to try to tell them about what you do and try to get them to buy your services, it's the same exact principle applies, just in a different setting and with a different type of person. Instead of consumers and salespeople, it's business owners trying to push themselves onto other business owners. So it's important to remember etiquette when going to a networking event. You should never make it all about yourself, but instead make it where it can be a mutually beneficial relationship.
Yeah, well said.
And lastly, as we get ready to close the show, I have one final question for you. And that is, if you have anything to say to business owners out there related to starting the new year, what would it be?
I would say use AI. Don't do this thing where you believe that it's just something that's going to go away. Now, don't use it as a crutch. Use it as a tool. So I watched the launch of ChatGPT 4.0, I think it was. And one of the things that, I forget the founder's name, one of the things that he said is that ChatGPT only has 100 million users at that time. And I was shocked. I was like shocked. So what that told me as a business owner is I'm still an early adapter, because I got on ChatGPT from last year this time. And even with the fact that a lot of people talk about it, a lot of people aren't using it. So I'm still an early adapter. And so I would recommend that every business owner finds out how to use ChatGPT to improve their business, to be more efficient. Because what you're probably going to find, a lot of the technology and apps and different tools that you may purchase or be subscribing to, it's essentially just a skin that someone's put on ChatGPT. So I think the top layer is learning ChatGPT, and the refinement of that point is learn what's called prompt engineering. So prompt engineering is the method by which you not only get answers out of ChatGPT, but you get better answers because you learn how to ask better questions. So that's one of the projects that I'm working on right now, is just a ChatGPT for startups and side hustlers resource. And I've put together some other resources, which I'll share with you, Christian, and you can share with your listeners. I heard someone say it, and I'm going to steal it. They said, AI is not going to take your job. For business owners, we can say AI is not going to put you out of business, but someone who knows how to use AI will put you out of business.
Yes, that's true. It's all about staying current with technology, and too many businesses fail to do that. ChatGPT, that's a great example. We did a whole episode about AI earlier last year, and we were talking about how AI should always aid, not replace, human interaction in a business. Because if you have a business that's running completely on AI without any human interaction at all to moderate it, it can create a little bit of a mess. So it's important to remember that AI is there to help you, but it should never replace human workers in general. And the example we gave in that episode, voice prompts, whenever you call a 1-800 phone number for customer service. The example we used in that episode was Comcast and Xfinity. They have a terrible AI voice prompt where if it doesn't understand what you need, it hangs up on you. See, that's an example of AI not being properly implemented. Now, if it gave the option to send the customer to an alternative prompt that required pushing buttons to get connected to the right person, then you could say the system was properly done because it keeps the customer interest in mind. See, that's just an example. When AI is done properly, it can be a boon to your business and it can help you. But if you don't use it properly and you're having problems like that, it's not going to help you. It's just going to anger your customer.
Christian, as long as I've known you, I've just realized that I did not link you on LinkedIn. So I've just linked you on LinkedIn because I wrote an article today about that exact same thing with the AI, because I think we have to realize that the AI is here to stay. It's moving really quickly. And if we don't, as business owners, learn how to use it and use it properly, we're going to be in trouble. But I think what's going to happen with people like you and people like me who are very people focused, we understand the technology, we use the technology, but we're people focused. I think we'll have almost an unfair advantage over people who purely just integrate AI and automation, because people are going to want that human touch. Now, we'll be able to use that automation to run a business that's lean, efficient. We can give great prices, great service, great turnaround, but they'll have someone on the other end of the phone that they can pick up and talk to. And I think that's going to be one of our unique selling points, and it's going to help us rise to the top. And people are going to appreciate that.
Yes, that's true. AI is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's just going to continue to advance as each day moves along. And we will start to see it in our everyday lives more often than we expect it to. And it's coming. Those of us who really focused on the technology industry, we probably saw this coming a good 20, 30 years ago when computers were slowly starting to become a hot thing in people's homes. Once people were able to learn the capabilities of computers, it just took things to the next level. So we don't see paper job applications anymore, for one thing, and paper newspapers, people probably forgot all about them. Magazines, forget it. All of it's online and it's all digital. My point with these examples is that we were seeing technology replace traditional methods and traditional things overall as time marched on. And it's gotten to that point to where we now have the ability for machines to perform certain tasks that humans normally would do. The AI craze, it's here to stay. It's going to continue to change every industry out there. We're going to see efficiency skyrocket. We're going to see customers getting served at a quicker rate. And I personally use a tool called now.site, and it is great for generating content for social media posts. It helps out with client needs quite a bit. Just to sum up what you said, in order to truly survive, embrace technology, embrace change, because those who do not move on with times and accept what is current current in terms of technology are going to lag behind and eventually go out of business. That's my final word on the overall subject of AI. We are now at the end of the episode. Before we close out, Anthony, is there any final statements you would like to make, or is there anything you'd like to bring up that we didn't get to talk about earlier?
And for all the listeners, if you can link up with myself, link up with Christian, there'll be some great information that we share. I tend to write an article a day about various things to do with business, and comes back to what I was saying about networking. It's a good opportunity to network, give me an opportunity to understand who you are, what your business does, that I can see who I can link you up with that might need your product or service.
And Anthony, where can our listeners find your CRM if they're looking for a good customer relationship management tool?
Well, you and I can talk about that because it is something that you and I can probably partner with. If you're looking to find out more about any of the services that I offer, you can go to Anthony-Lindsay, that's Lindsay, Lindsay.com. So Anthony-Lindsay.com, or you can go to Astor Business Centers, that's ASTORBUSINESS Centers, CENTERS, AstorBusinessCenters.com, or as you know, Christian, we've known each other for years, so people can always get in contact with me through you.
Yes, and for all of our listeners who are listening on YouTube, the links to both of Anthony's websites will be in the description below. I invite you to please go check him out and check out Astor Business Centers. And also keep in mind, for all of our United Kingdom listeners, Astor Business Centers also has a location in London. Thank you once again for joining me, Anthony. It was a pleasure having you on the show again. I will certainly be inviting you back on for more episodes of BizCast. I hope that all the business owners who listened to this episode today got a lot of great insight and are now ready to tackle 2024 like there's no tomorrow, with no fear. Thanks again, Anthony.
Thanks, Christian, and thanks for having me. I always look forward to talking to you and hearing what you have to say.
And we will certainly be keeping in touch more often throughout this new year, because there will be more podcast episodes to tape, and all of our listeners are certainly going to be more than interested in what you have to say. But yes, thanks again, Anthony. I wish you a great day. A happy new year once again.
Okay, thanks, Christian. Take care.
Take care now.